Oh. Well, hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and this is My Life as a Landlord. I am so proud of you that you are educating yourself with listening to today's show. Today's show is chocked full of resources, and I can't wait to get to my guest here. The whole reason I started this podcast was because so many of you were asking me how on earth we were self managing our rentals in Canada, but we live in Hawaii. In fact, during COVID, I didn't go to Canada for 3 years. How did we do that? Well, we set up systems and we hired wonderful people who we can trust. One of those folks that I trust is my podcast and business coach, Sydney Young. Thanks for being here, Sid.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Yay! Well, so let's at least talk about how this all came about. I had put on my podcast topics because what happens is I put the topics that I want to cover and then I find guests to fill that topics. It's not the other way around because I get approached all the time from people who want to be on the show. No, no, no. Listeners, I go, here's the value for you, and then we get guests. And you, Sid, jumped up and said, I want to talk about this topic. This is
Yes.
mine.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, this is totally mine. This is up my alley.
No, that's perfect. Well, let's talk about this. But let's talk about big picture of how we can. I mean, the biggest thing that people are concerned about is tenant placement and then ongoing maintenance, ongoing support for tenants. So let's just talk big picture process on how do we place tenants remotely. You've got some great insight on that. Can you walk us through how we would do that big picture?
Yeah, for sure. So, like when I do tech work or any type of systems work for my clients, my biggest thing that I like to bring into anything is stepping back to that 10,000 foot view to say, what is the overall big picture process from start to finish? So, this way we can actually figure out in each step that you're working with a client, a tenant, whoever it may be, you can actually template things so that you can create better resources every time you take somebody through that process, because we know as a landlord we're always going to be doing this process over and over. You may have a long-term tenant, but this is something that you're going to have to do definitely more than once. And so when you start to become more seasoned at this, then it's like, okay, I need to have these systems in place. So overall, the first thing that I like to we kind of hear the stages that we can kind of take this through. So the first one would be like the inquiry stage. This is where you're posting your unit for rent, and then we have people inquiring about your unit. And then we have the screening process, we have the scheduling and viewing process, the signing process when you're actually saying, hey, it's official. And then we have the onboarding process. So what does it look like to actually onboard them as a new tenant and say thank you? And oh no, I have somebody walking up to my door as I'm recording. What do we do?
That's all right.
Can we
That's all right.
pause?
I tell you what, hang on, hang on.
Okay.
What we'll do is okay, we are back. Life happens. Somebody came to the door, so we just had to temporarily pause the recording. That's fine. We were talking about high level, big picture process, 5 steps to place tenants remotely. We were just talking about inquiring, screening, scheduling, signing, onboarding. What's next?
Yeah. So the next thing is let's talk about the first system. So like this can kind of feel like, well, what are all those steps, right? What do we actually do to make a templated system for all of these different phases of the experience, right? So the first thing that I recommend is in the inquiry process is making it simplified for you. So a lot of people are posting on Marketplace or posting their ads on Craigslist or wherever they're getting leads for their unit. And when they're posting these, they're having a million emails come in, right? I'm interested, I'm interested, I'm interested, right? And it's like, well, what do you even do with all of those emails? How can you even actually screen them to see if they're a good fit? And having a conversation back and forth is not going to give you the data you need to make a very strong data driven decision on the right tenant versus an emotional decision based on a conversation, right? So I feel like it's best to look at data first and then reach out to have like a further conversation. So I always say to everyone applying, and the first step in something that would be a great idea to template is to use a digital application form. And I highly recommend staying away from the PDF side of things because that is harder for people to like download, fill it out, scan it, send it back. It just makes it a little bit more complicated. So I love using an app called fillout.com. If you already have like an existing website, you can embed it, or it generates a simple link that you can send to people. You can include it in emails. You can include it in the advertisement yourself, like itself, that you, like the actual ad you used for advertising your unit. And so the nice part with the digital application is you can ask all these detailed questions to get all the information you need. And getting people to fill this out in general, weeds out so many non-qualified people for the unit as well. So that's something that's super important, to make sure that you're not having all the tire kickers and people that are just saying I'm interested, and you're spending all this time going back and forth with these people, and it just doesn't always work out, right? So this is great. So you can actually see information about them, their income, credit score, rental history. What does it look like? A fun, actually, one that I picked with my last tenant is I did a voice note upload feature, and I ended up picking him because he was the only one that actually left a voice note and like was intentional about it and explained the situation, like, where he was at and what his goal is for moving and all this stuff. And so it was a really great personal touch. So he met all the qualifications, like from the data side of things, but then this was like the personal note. So I could make that decision to reach out. So I thought that was really cool. And then and then just things like vehicle information, like if they have 5 vehicles and you only have 1 parking space, this might not be the right fit for them. So you can actually weed them out based on like, are they a great fit? And do they have pets? Is it going to work out for, because it needs to be a good fit on both sides, right? It's great for the tenant, and that if you're going to put a tenant into a unit that's not going to be it's going to be too small or not fit for their lifestyle, it's not going to last long term. You're going to have a higher turnover rate, and then it's just not going to work, right? So those are some things that I like to include in the digital application form. And so you can go to fillout.com. It's free. I actually am going to attach a template you can import into your own account below in the show notes. So you'll be able to click on that and then download it yourself and just start using it right away if you'd like. And so that's my first system.
So fillout.com. So fillout.com. And I love this feature. I think this is really cool. I have a bit of a different system, as you know, because I'm just old school. But I really like this feature. And the truth is, landlords in general, business people in general, don't want to waste time. So if you can pre-screen people before you even show them,
Yeah.
then you're looking for the deal breakers as fast as you possibly can. If your unit is 1 bedroom and they're applying for 6 people plus a couple of dogs, then don't even bother showing them, because there's deal breakers right there, right? So,
Yeah.
and I love your idea about the vehicles. That's another thing, is how much parking is available. Is this realistic for them to be there? If all of this works, then you can go ahead and schedule a showing, which won't be a waste of time. It's really going to be a check to see if the potential tenant likes, if it's going to fit what they need. And I know you've got some scheduling techniques on how to help connect instead of emailing and texting back and forth about, playing calendar wars here. Tell us about your tool.
Yeah, for sure. So another fun tech tool that I have is called cal.com. And that one's super great because you could actually set up like a scheduler and put your availability on the back end of it. And then your potential tenants can go ahead and pick a date and time that works for them to come schedule the unit. It cuts back and forth on like the emails. Hey, does this work for you? Oh no, that doesn't work. And then this and that. And we all are busy and we want to save time here. So especially when you're away too, like if you're remote and you're having to schedule it for somebody else, you might want to put in your contact that's going to be actually showing the unit in the local area. Whoever's going to be doing that on behalf of you, you maybe want to put their availability in, right? And so this gives you a little bit of flexibility to give people an option for booking a day and time. They take it more seriously as well too, right? So that's they're like, oh, this is the time I got to be there. It's more official. They'll actually, show up on time, hopefully, all those things. And then another thing I was actually going to say along with the scheduling is that sharing like a video of the unit or like a 3D tour or even like a floor plan really helps if you can template all that for every one of your units, because then that way every single time you have an inquiry, they can actually browse all of that first when they're actually going through. And that weeds out people that are going to come look and say, oh, this isn't the right fit, even though they knew this was the size of the bedroom the whole time, right? Or something like that, right? So that's also a fun part is I always send a video. If here's the unit, take a quick view. If it works, it works. And then we can schedule something in person. And then a lot of the time too, if you're away and you have tenants moving to town, it saves you from having, like, if you're not even in the same town as your unit, you have this all templated, somebody's moving from out of town to your unit, you're now able to send them the whole video, the specs, the floor plans, everything of the unit, and you didn't have to worry about showing it, and they're coming to town and they have all the information. So then they're feeling great about the decision too, because they know all the details about it. So I think it benefits both sides. And then with that too, another thing is that when you're doing the showing, a few things that you can do is, or use, or tools you could use are like things like smart locks. I have a Wiser one, I have a TELUS security one, and you can change the codes on your phone. So if people need a temporary access or something, you can use that for any type of maintenance people, contractors that need to come by the unit, that kind of thing. That's kind of jumping more to the maintenance phase, but that's just something else that can be used. Or even a lockbox is great, because then you can have that key available for your local contact to go drop in. They're able to get to the unit, or have other people have access to the key. So then that way they can, like, any type of contractor or something like that. So those are some tips and ideas around the showing of the unit.
Love it. Absolutely
Yeah.
love it. I think that's so cool. Wonderful. Well, if you've got well, let's talk about this for a second. When people think about a video, I think a lot of people get intimidated going, well, I'm not a photographer, I'm not a videographer, but
Yeah.
let's just be realistic. All they need to do is hit record on their phone, because
Yep.
everybody has recorded and videoed and taken pictures on their it doesn't have to be like edited and
Professional.
professional, right? Like we're just
No.
talking, just do a video, right?
Yeah, like mine is so simple. I literally say, hi, this is the unit, and I hit record. It's not perfect. It is shaky a little bit because I don't have a stabilizer thing, right? Like nobody does. So we're not going to have to worry about all that. Just keep it simple. I say, here's the patio, here's this door, this is where this is. You just can explain it as you talk. Or if you didn't even want to talk, you don't have to talk either. You can just have a video. If that's also making, if that's uncomfortable, then just go ahead and record the unit walking through, right? Show them around, and then it keeps it simple. Save the video. And the nice part is you could even show the video on the beginning of the fill out form too. So if you have it sitting there with the pictures of the unit and the video, you can have it all together. People can view, see the unit, and then submit the application.
I think that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So we've already talked about, let me go back to your 5 steps here. So we've talked about inquiries when somebody comes in through Craigslist or Zillow or apartments.com or
Yep.
Facebook Marketplace or however they're doing it. And then you're screening them using fillout.com, and then you're scheduling them using cal.com, something similar. And then at some point, it's going to be a yes, right? At some
Yep.
point, it's going to be a yes, and it's going to be resulting in creating a lease and signing stuff. And how do you do that remotely?
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing is when they're the right candidate, and it's going to be your pick, your tenant, and you're ready to sign with them. There's templated leases. It depends on the where you're located. Like for example, in BC, we already have a template that's a downloadable PDF. That's a fillable PDF. So you can go ahead and fill out the entire PDF online. So it keeps it simple and clean. And then there's also Adobe eSign. So you could upload it to Adobe eSign. So then that way you've filled out the document, you've uploaded it to Adobe eSign, you pull in their information, and you can assign where they need to initial or sign. It just lets you drag and drop where their initials and signature need to go. And then once you upload that, you can hit send. It requests their signature. You can sign it on your side as well. And then you have a fully signed lease.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. That's very cool. Now let's talk about the deposit, because that's the next step, is that now we got to talk about money. When we're talking about money remotely, Canada and US do it a little bit differently, but let's talk about Canada first, and then I'll do the US side if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds great. So in Canada, our main option is e-transfer for electronic funds transfer. It's the simplest and easiest because all you need is an email address. So if you have a specific, and something else that's also a great idea just to throw in here is that if you create a specific rental email address for your rental units, whether you have 1 or 5, you can create a specific rental email address. And then what you can do with this email address is register it for auto deposit on your banking. So that way the money goes directly to the correct account you want your rental income to come into. And because it's auto depositing, they don't have to worry about a security question, and they know it's going to the right person, and then you get the money faster as well. So that's a little tip for the e-transfer thing.
But I'm also going to make sure that e-transfer is a bit of a double-edged sword. I actually
Okay.
haven't turned on the auto, what is it, auto deposit.
Auto deposit.
The
Okay.
reason I haven't, here's my take on it. The reason I haven't turned it on is that if I have a potential tenant who just automatically sends me to my email address
Mm-hmm.
a deposit in BC, so this is geographic dependent. If you
Yep.
accept the money, then the
Right.
unit is theirs. So I purposefully do not have, when I'm receiving it, I purposefully
Oh,
don't, because I want to make sure that once I accept that money, that's it. Even if we don't have a signed
yeah.
lease, even if I don't want that tenant, if I take their money, it
It's
changes it.
confirmed.
However, I love your idea of having a separate rent payment e-transfer that can
Yes.
have auto deposit. So that's the trick. If you're going to use auto deposit in Canada, make sure you use a different email address. I think that's brilliant. And I know Ontario
Yeah.
and other places back east are they're very much similar to British Columbia. A lot of them, Newfoundland, Labrador. I mean, these really well done on how they do all of their landlording stuff. That's very cool. Um,
Yeah. Sure.
so the
That's
other thing
awesome. Thanks for
yeah, go
sharing
ahead,
that.
please, please.
No, I was just gonna say thanks for sharing that, because that's a good tip too. So even another thing, just to like take this a step further, maybe for the really seasoned landlords, just as
Yeah,
another idea that I wanted to share, is that I've done this for a few people. Is that if you have a lot of units, you could actually have your own rental website that lists all of your units on it, along with your application form and everything. And so you could have like your main email address that's, let's say, client or tenant facing, like or lead facing, as the one that's going to make sure that that people see that doesn't have auto deposit on. That could be the one you accept deposits to, and then that way you can accept where it goes. And then within that, you can create, like you said, the second email address to accept the auto deposit for rent, so you're not having to do that every month. And the nice part is if you have your own website domain, whatever you call rentals, something rentals.com, what you can do is you can create multiple email addresses from that domain. So you could say rent at yourdomain.com or deposits at yourdomain.com. So then that way, if you have you could use those separate emails for different things.
I think that's brilliant. And because
Yeah.
we're building a tiny home community in Paul River. And so we're going to have a lot more rentals and a lot more moving parts financially. I think exactly what we're talking about today is exactly what we're going to have to set up in the next 6 months, because right now everything's coming to me or to my email. And it
Yeah.
can't be that way. We have to
No.
level
Yeah.
up. It's making us institute these systems. In fact, I'm looking at this going, that's a really good idea. That's fantastic. And it's immediately applicable to me because guess what? We still are landlords. That really is our day job. Let me talk
Yeah.
about the US side. When we're talking
Sure.
about deposits, security deposit payments, and things like that. Now, I always try to give the tenants, regardless of where they are, a option to walk into a bank and put money in, which
Okay.
is designed for just tenant facing, like you say, tenant facing. That is that they're allowed to do that. And so if they don't want to e-transfer, or sometimes we have an ACH option, like in some locations in British Columbia, I do have an ACH option, but in Hawaii, I don't. So you have to kind of deal with that. But you can walk into a bank branch and say, here is the checking account number for this rental or for this company, and this is where we receive the rents. And so when it comes time to the first, we just say, rent is due on or before midnight on the first. It's their responsibility. So we do not collect rent, is what I'm getting at. There's a lot of
Yeah.
places where people walk around and they collect rent. That I don't do that. If you're operating as a remote landlord, that is nearly impossible to do.
For sure.
But on the US side, the electronic option, you can pay with Venmo. There is Zelle, which for the US listeners, that is a normal, it's sort of like an e-transfer in Canada, but it's a little more archaic. There's also options that you can pay your rent with a credit card, which is weird, through like PayPal, or there's a couple of different programs in the US where you can do it. I typically just tell people either Venmo me or put it directly into the bank account, especially if it's a local. It's always a local bank to the rental, and so
Yep.
it's on them. They have to pay the bill, and it's on them. And then all we do on the first is check it. So that's
Yep.
that's it. So you've got so we've signed the lease, paid the deposit. Now what?
Okay, so that actually brings me some things that you said and that you were just talking about kind of flows into this next topic, which is the onboarding side of things. So when you had said, sending them that information, so maybe this is something that would be beneficial, especially if you have lots of units, is creating a welcome email template that actually says like, welcome, we'd love to offer you the unit, see attached leases, to be signed. Here's where you can send the deposit, all the information in one templated email. So it keeps it super simple for you to copy and paste every single time. And then in there, you can say access info, all the details about the unit, manuals, parking information, just everything, contact list for emergencies, all those kind of things can be templated on this welcome email, reference guide kind of thing. And then that way you can have one for every single unit. And then that way you're not having to, say the same thing over again. Because I feel like as business owners, as a landlord, you're going to do a lot of the same things over and over again. So my biggest tip is template everything you can.
No, it's awesome.
Yeah,
It makes sense. Yeah. So there's a lot of newbie landlords that listen to this. There's a lot of seasoned landlords that are
yep,
listening to this and they're going, yeah, we know 98% of this, but they'll get one nugget and that's fine. My nugget landlords out there. But the newbie landlords are in here and this is overwhelming. Like the whole concept of tenant screening and all of that. So speaking to the newbie landlords, where do they need to start? Or how do they even start?
for sure. I think the very first thing to implement would be the application form. And this is just because then it gives you the automated system to screen people and get great leads coming in from the beginning. And then that is going to shape the rest of the experience for you and the potential tenants going into this process. And then that way, from the time the inquiries come in to the time you're onboarding a new tenant, having the correct application, filtering all those people out is going to save you so much time and so much stress. And that is going to be my number one thing to implement. And everybody can implement, even if you just use the link below and copy that. I promise you it's going to be easy. You share the link, it emails you every time somebody sends in their submission. You can review it and then you can get back to them. It's so simple and it will save you so many hours. And then it will also keep things so much more organized.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Let's wrap it up. Let's go through the resources that we've talked about today.
Yeah, sounds great. So I would say the free tech stack, and these are all free tools, is fillout.com. We have cal.com, CAL.com, and then Adobe eSign. So you just search Adobe eSign, it'll come up. And you can use all those tools for free. They allow you to use them, and then you can use those to help implement and up-level your systems, and template your systems as a remote landlord.
That's amazing. Sid, if a listener is interested in contacting you and learning more about all of these systems and going beyond, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, they can go check out my website. It's heysydney.co. It's Hey and then SYDNEY and then .co. And then you can check me out there.
I love it. Any parting thoughts?
I think just the biggest thing is everything you notice you do more than once, make it a template. That's
Good
everything.
advice.
That's the goal, and that's the key to systemizing your life. So
Love
never
it.
do one thing more than once.
I love it. That's great. Thanks for being here today. I appreciate it.
Yay. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Okay.